So I don't know why the defense doesn't brief this in advance. I would appreciate it when there's something significant. An error doesn't help anybody. Maybe we want a reliable answer to evidentiary questions. That's why I require that this material be litigated in advance. Due process is more important than court deadlines, so I'm compelled to consider it when you present it. So, to correct my analysis, under 1103, the defendant may present evidence of a character trait of a victim in order to prove the victim's action at the time in question in conformity with the trait. 1103A1. It's not inadmissible under 1101 if the evidence is offered by the defendant to prove conduct of the victim in conformity with the character or trait of character. Here, the assertion is that Morris Black is a violent person, that he assaulted Mr. Durst, leading to the fracas in which Mr. Black died. All we have is Mr. Durst's testimony to this. This could provide some corroboration, so that if the jury did not happen to believe Mr. Durst, there would be evidence of these traits. This is, as Mr. Chesnoff has pointed out, very important to the defense. The 1101 evidence is pretty compelling as far as a plan or scheme to kill witnesses. This calls out for refutation if possible. So the 352 analysis does not exclude the evidence because it is probative, so it's not substantially more prejudicial. But here's the problem. The only evidence I know of this is from Mr. Durst. This is not admitted for his state of mind. State of mind is a different idea. State of mind is knowledge of character traits so that he acts more aggressively to defend himself. Here, it is the truth of the matter which is at issue. Is Mr. Black, in fact, a violent person? Proving that could show that there's action in conformity therewith at this time. Unless Mr. Durst personally perceived these acts of violence, he's testified to shooting inside the house at an eviction notice. He can testify to that, but unless he perceived it, it's going to be hearsay. These stories about the library, these other suggestions you have made that Mr. Black is violent, that he needed restraints at the hospital. Perhaps that's admissible, but I'm going to sustain a hearsay objection to exclude this evidence, not an 1103 objection. So that's clarifying my record. Shall we get our jurors here? Not all here. Are you going to brief this Dr. Loftus claim, or is it an oral argument for which you wanted early?
So the court understands, I kept hearing that my hypotheticals were not accurate.
Yeah.
And that Mr. Llewellyn was, in my mind, going to tell that to the jury, as he's told you. I purposely went back and we listened and we read, and they track what was testified to in conditional exams or elsewhere. And so I tried to think of a vehicle by which, and as an aside, the court said something to the effect of, I think so too, something like that. And I said to myself, I don't understand why anybody's being critical, because we were so hyper careful not to deviate from what was actually said. And I thought of a vehicle, a motion in limine, so that I could have some direction moving forward, not want to start something contentious in front of the jury. That's the reason I did it, and that's it.
All right, and I'll hear from Mr. Lewin about if any of the facts were misstated. I think there's a different problem with the hypotheticals, personally. I think they can be argued. I don't have, but
So,
yes.
number one, the problem with hypotheticals, as the court's aware, is that unless they are absolutely unsupported by any evidence, so in essence, if somebody proposes a hypothetical and it's absolutely contrary to the evidence, then you can object and you can say that it's an improper hypothetical. If in fact there is an argument as to whether the hypothetical applies, then the hypothetical can be presented and the sides can argue it. Here's the problem with Mr. Chestnut's hypothetical. And I'm going by memory because, again, Your Honor, they haven't briefed anything. I don't have anything in front of me.
We can wait. We can wait then. Do you want to brief it?
No, I presented him with the exact hypotheticals verbatim in the pleadings that we filed.
We do have jurors who are ready. I was presuming that we didn't have time here.
Oh,
Why don't,
I don't
maybe
need-
Mr. Lewin and I can talk about this privately.
You talk about it. I have a different problem with the hypotheticals, but
Well,
Please
okay,
don't-
so I
please
guess...
don't share.
no. I mean, I think that there are certain facts that give enormous weight to the reliability of these observations or memories, and those are omitted from the hypothetical, downplayed. But that's so it makes it appear that it is more subject to this the memory problems described. And I think the memory problems are reasonably described, but I don't think the scenario quite matches the theory because of the selection of facts. It's the editing of those facts that, given certain facts, the hypothetical may apply. And
Well, I tried very hard in the hypotheticals to take everything that was said.
I thought we weren't going to...
Okay.
I'm more than happy to respond now, but Mr. Chestnut responds.
No,
then tells
I
me-
wanted to let him know. I wanted to let him know my thinking so
Okay.
he can clarify his response to my
Okay.
criticism.
Well,
And
will help the court for me to just briefly lay out my thinking on it?
it will, but not now because I'd
Okay.
rather use jury time.
Whenever the court wants me
Yeah.
to, I'm available.
Yeah. Okay, we can get it. With Mr. DeGuerin and Mr. Chesnoff, and we have Mr. Milius, Bailey, and Miata present. You may resume your examination of Mr. Durst.
Okay, Bob, you had been to your nephew's wedding in Houston for the weekend. You stayed at the Four Seasons, and then you returned to Galveston. When you returned to Galveston, did you go to the apartment or to the San Luis?
I go to San Luis Resort.
I believe you said, if so, forgive me for repeating it, had you given Klaus Dillman notice that you would be moving?
Yes,
All right. That is, that Dorothy Siner would be moving.
yes.
Okay. So, do you know, well, let me put it this way. Had you told Morris Black that you were back in Galveston after going to Houston?
No,
So, as far as you know, did Morris Black know that you were staying at the San Luis?
no.
on the day that Morris Black met his death, what did you do that morning?
I got up, I drove to this Jewish synagogue, which is about a mile from the apartment.
That's in Galveston.
Yes,
And what did you do there?
I jogged to the apartment.
How long did it take you to get to the apartment?
10 minutes, maybe.
And what time of the morning was it when you got to the apartment?
Probably 8 or 9 o'clock.
When you got there, what first drew your attention?
When I got there, before I entered the building, I could tell that my TV was on, which meant that Morris must have had a spare key and had gotten in and turned the TV on.
How did you tell the TV was on?
I heard it.
When you'd last had anything to do with Morris, what did you say to him about coming into your apartment?
I told him I was leaving, and I guess that's what I told him. I was leaving.
Did you give him permission to be in your apartment?
No,
In fact, was the last time you saw him when he shot the gun the second time in the apartment?
yes,
What had you done with the gun after that?
I had hid it in the oven, rather in the broiler part of the oven.
Earlier you said that you had kept it in the cabinet in the kitchen, but did Morris know where you'd kept it in the kitchen?
Yes,
So why did you hide it in the oven in the broiler compartment?
I did not want him to have it.
Okay. When you came to your apartment, was the door open? Was it locked?
The door was shut. It locked automatically.
So did you get in?
Yes, I opened the front door of the building and walked to my apartment front door, unlocked it. The lock was in the doorknob, that kind of a lock. So I unlocked the door, walked into the apartment. Morris was sitting at the table with the yellow jacket that he always wore, was piled up on the table.
So what did you think?
I thought, I want to make sure the gun is in the oven.
So what did you do?
I walked past Morris Black into the kitchen and reached down to the broiler where I had left the gun.
What did you find?
The gun was not there.
And then what did you think?
I thought Morris must have taken the gun.
Did that concern you?
Yes,
What did you do?
I stood up, walked about 2 steps to where Morris was sitting at the table. And when I got close to the table, he started standing up.
And then what happened?
Well, then I realized that he had taken the gun out from under his yellow jacket, and he turned towards me with the gun.
Where did he have the gun?
He had the gun on the table underneath his yellow jacket.
When he turned toward you with the gun, where was the gun?
In his right hand.
In his right hand.
Correct.
I'm going to get the gun.
After he checks it, I want to tell him, go ahead.
Exhibit 163, People's 163. 22 caliber.
It says item 95.
That's
Oh,
different.
there it is on the back, 163, Your Honor.
Yeah.
The original. We have Mr. Bailey back here, Your Honor, far away from the firearm.
Don't ask me to check it. He's sitting behind you, too.
Does this appear to be the gun?
Sure.
You mentioned earlier that you'd seen Morris take the gun apart and so forth. Is this the way that he left the front sight?
The front sight, yes.
Do you know if that's the way the front sight is actually supposed to be on that gun?
I think it's on backwards.
All right. So you said Morris Black had the gun and he came out from under his jacket and started around toward you, right?
Yes.
What did you do?
I grabbed his hand on the gun.
So if he came up from the table and came out around toward you, would you show the jury how you grabbed the gun?
I think the problem is, Your Honor, we've got no description of what hands they're in, what's going on, so I think the record is wholly inadequate at this point.
I will try to describe it.
All right. I'm holding, for the record, I'm holding the gun as if Morris were holding it in his right hand with his finger on the trigger. How did you grab the gun? With your right hand?
Mr. Durst is grasping the, with his right
I
hand, the
grabbed
left
the
thumb
gun
of the
in
right
his hand
hand.
with my right hand. With my left hand, I put on his shoulder.
All right. Then what happened?
So Mr. Durst wrapped his right hand around the thumb on the left side of the firearm and the rest of his hand on the right side on,
Yes.
on the back.
In addition, Your Honor, Mr. DeGuerin was standing to the left of Mr. Durst in a standing position. Mr. Durst, who's in a wheelchair, was obviously seated. The gun was extending out, and Mr. DeGuerin was pointed toward the left. I think it might be helpful if Mr. DeGuerin clarifies with Mr. Durst what position Mr. Durst was in at the time, so we're not confused by the current.
That, so do your best to describe the situation. I think that was welcome, and I'll correct. Everything that Mr. Lewin described is also so.
You heard what he said, Bob, and you're not able to readily stand up from the wheelchair, are you?
Well, sure I am.
Can you stand up?
He said, no, it's,
The boss is shaking his head.
yeah. We're going to go with Deputy Washington's assessment there. We're not going to take a chance that Mr. Durst will injure himself.
Okay, you've been assessed as a fall risk. You have a bracelet on that says that, don't you?
Yes, right here it says fall risk. I can still stand up.
But,
He can stand up, but not right now. With the reenactment, we'll have to use your imagination.
so we're not gonna be able to do a reenactment, and that's why we've got, well, exhibit number, I believe it's, People's Exhibit 199A.
Right, that's the video, that the defense video, so you
Yes,
can-
Your Honor, permission to play it now.
Any objection?
No.
No.
Your
And
Honor, I don't know if this will work. I'm just.
he can adopt the video.
No, I'm just kind of potentially suggesting this as well. Potentially, if Mr. Chesnoff wants to serve as Mr. Durst, and Mr. Durst is directing Mr. Chesnoff, then at least we have, my concern is just that the record, we've got Bob sitting down, it's problematic. I don't know.
The
what
record
that's
is
all about.
important, but
Yeah,
the
well,
jurors,
I'll have Mr.
the jurors' view is more important than the record. The record is also important, but these are the decision makers here. So keep that in mind. Yes?
Let's
I would have to talk to my agent.
Right, okay.
If I might have Mr. Chesnoff play the part of Mr. Black, and I will put my hand on the gun as if I were Mr. Durst.
Okay, you can do that, and Mr. Durst can indicate whether or not this is correct.
Can we have a stipulation, Dick, just for the record, that Dave
He's
is...
taller than I am?
Well,
Yeah, I'll
no, not
stipulate.
only is he taller than you are, but that the difference in height between Mr. Chesnoff and yourself is greater than the difference in height between Mr. Black and Mr. Durst.
I think Mr. Black and Mr. Durst were about the same size.
Correct.
Yeah, why don't you sit down?
So will you stipulate to that?
Which stipulation are we on now? Number 273?
On the table.
Do your best, gentlemen.
Okay. I'm not trying to fight this.
You should do it, so you know what you can say that's active.
Oh, yeah, he can't see.
Okay. Let's just go on.
Tell you what, can we use this as the table?
I'm uncomfortable with Mr. Chesnoff being behind me with a gun.
Why, perhaps over here near our California flag.
Watching closely.
That way Mr. Durst can see close up, and jurors can see it.
Here, take my check.
I'll sit back here if it's easier.
Thank you, John.
You don't want
Mind if
to,
I stand, Your Honor?
you don't want to take my suggestion to do it over here.
I was all for it. Go, Rick, you prefer us to do it over there?
Yeah, do it in the front.
Well, I think actually the jury will have a better view.
All right, I'll go with your, it's your case, you present it over here, that's fine. We have one alternate who's gonna have to stand through this, but,
Well, if you'll just, if I can direct Mr. Chesnoff, and we'll do it on the screen also. If you will, I'll be coming from behind you as Durst is, and you're starting to stand up, have your hand on the gun, and I'll grab the gun like this.
all right, so we'll slow down here. And so in this version, Mr. Chesnoff is standing up, he's holding the firearm with his right hand. I can't see if his finger is near the
My
trigger.
finger is on the trigger.
Finger on the trigger, and Mr. DeGuerin has placed his left arm on the back of Mr. Chesnoff's shoulder. He's grasping the firearm. A little bit different from the way Mr. Durst described it. Here, he's got the thumb over the
You have to
barrel,
hand it over the pistol.
and then his hand is over his four fingers of his right hand are over the front of the firearm. The thumb is over the top of the firearm in this example.
That's correct.
Your Honor, the only issue we've got is it's an interesting demonstration, but Mr. Durst isn't involved in it.
No, we're going to ask Mr. Durst if that looks right or not.
Oh, okay.
Does this look right, Bob?
That looks right to me.
All right, and then you wrestled and fell backwards?
Can we have Mr. Durst describe, rather than having counsel lead him through, we would like Mr. Durst to describe what happened, and then counsel can act it out, but we don't, it's leading if they're saying it and he's saying yes.
Well, I'm going to allow some leading here. Mr. Chesnoff was
I was falling.
falling
I
backwards.
might not get up, though.
You need to look toward me. Okay. And what happens next?
Don't move the
The gun went off.
What?
The gun went off, said Mr.
Where
Durst.
was you and where was Morris Black when the gun went off?
Lying on the floor of the kitchen.
So you fell backwards?
Mr. Chesnoff has done his best Hollywood falling back. Like still grasping the gun, finger
20
on the
years ago in
trigger.
Galveston, I could get down.
And we'll stipulate that Mr. DeGuerin got down with him.
And the gun,
Then he won't actually have to do it.
where's the television camera for this?
This is my favorite part of the whole trial so far.
I don't know who to root for here.
All right, Mr. Lewin, why don't you describe it? I can't see it.
So we've got Mr. DeGuerin playing Mr. Black.
No.
No, Bob, I'm sorry, Bob is on the right side. And they are both.
Well, I describe it. I'm not sure that I want to.
I'm glad you have a mask on.
All right, so we're both on the floor. My left elbow's on the floor. My right hand's on the gun. Your right hand, or Bob Durst's right hand is on the gun, on the top of the gun. Morris Black has got his finger on the trigger. Is this when the gun goes off? Bob?
Yes.
Can we add that at the time the gun is going off, both Mr. Durst and Mr. Black are flat on the floor?
That's what was being reenacted.
And would also be directly behind where Mr. Black was sitting.
Okay, that's what they reenacted.
No, it's in the doorway. I've got plenty of help.
Okay.
You have a career ahead of you then.
So Bob, with your hand on the gun, over the gun, and over Morris's hand, when the gun went off, did it eject the bullet?
You're asking me?
What?
That's my question.
Yes, so the question to you, did it eject the bullet?
Yes.
Did your area between your thumb and your forefinger get caught in the cylinder, in the receiver when it came back?
No.
Like this.
I don't understand the question.
You're asking if it was pinched?
Yes.
Did you get pinched? The gun pinch you?
Did you notice at the time whether the gun pinched your thumb?
I did not notice.
One other point, I'm not sure that we had an affirmation that this reenactment here, when the two of you are on the floor, described by Mr. Lewin and Mr. Milius and by you and Mr. Chesnoff, I think, piped in. Was that accurate? Is that the way it happened?
That's a full-service law firm.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. But was that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me show you two photographs which were taken by the police after your arrest. I'm not sure what the plaintiff's exhibit or people's exhibit is. It's our 11 and 12.
Their 11 and 12 is their internal number. Doesn't help us. Hmm? Yeah.
First, is this a photograph that was taken by the police when you were arrested in Galveston?
I have no idea.
Well, is that you? Oh, it's not on this one.
There's nothing to look at.
I see, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's me, and that's the photograph that was taken.
About how long after Morris Black's death was that photograph taken? How many days?
Dick, do you want a
Would have been a
stipulation?
week.
Dick, do you want a stipulation as to the exact date to make it easier?
Sure, it was 10 days, I believe.
Why don't we give the date, we'll give both dates, and then the jury will have that.
Okay. Sorry, I don't have it on the top of my head.
Okay, I
It's about
think-
been 10 days.
I think if we stipulate, on the timing, we're gonna have, Dick, tell me if this is correct. We're gonna have the shooting occurring October 28th, and we're going, I'm sorry, September 20th, yeah, and, of 2001, and we're gonna have the arrest followed by the photographs. I think it's October 9th, but I wanna make sure here.
I believe that's right.
Hold on, let me just make sure so we get this right.
I think it was September 29th and October 8th.
Okay, there we go.
October 9th is the arrest. Mr. DeGuerin, if you, we'll stipulate that's the date of the arrest and the date of the photos.
And the 29th was the date of the shooting. I think that's what Mr.
No, 28th is the date of the shooting.
Well, Bob, what's your recollection about the date of the shooting
The 29th,
and the date of your arrest?
the 9th.
The 9th, all right. So let's see the second photograph, which is a close-up of your hands. What's the number, please?
This is 40B.
40B, and that's People's Exhibit 40B?
Correct.
All right. Bob, on your right thumb, close to the web between your thumb and forefingers, is what appears to be a resolving blood blister. First, were you aware when the gun went off that your finger got pinched?
No,
Did you become aware later
that you had.
Your Honor, the question assumes a fact,
Yes,
not
yes.
evidence.
Sustained.
Motion to strike the answer.
the forensics said that's what found my thumb, but I have no knowledge of it myself.
All right. I want to play the video animation. And please watch it as it plays. If it's all right, I'll narrate briefly, Judge, as it goes on, so the record will be clear.
You may.
Can you see the screen, Bob? It'll be on the screen.
Mr. DeGuerin, did we ever get did you want that stipulation on the date, or did you not?
I think his testimony was, the shooting was the 29th. And
No, but I understand, I'm just asking you, did you want a date, a stipulation of when these two events occurred or no?
We do that.
If you stipulate that-
I'm sorry?
We don't do that after stipulation program at this time.
All right.
I'm certainly willing to stipulate we're having some technical difficulties.
We're getting some help there.
Mr. Milley is well says.
Well, that's not,
Thank you.
can we get it full screen and can we start it at the beginning? All right. Now, were you watching, Bob?
I am.
All right, the door's going to open and the person, or the figure that's supposed to be you see what's at the desk?
Yes.
And that figure is supposed to be Morris Black, and there's a yellow jacket on the desk. Am I correct so far?
Yes.
All right. If we could start it, please. The door opens. You're at the door. You come in.
Can Mr. Durst
Sure.
describe it instead of Mr. DeGuerin?
No, that's going to be a disaster.
I've allowed Mr. DeGuerin to
And could we start it over, please?
I'm allowing Mr. DeGuerin to do that.
All right, I'm going to narrate. The door opens, you're at the door, you shut the door, you walk across the room toward the kitchen and go to the kitchen, to the oven. You look in the broiler, there's no gun there. You turn around and confront Morris. You wrestle over the gun and the gun goes off as you hit the floor. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that the way it happened?
Just about.
Did you have your finger on the trigger at any time?
I never had my finger in the child inside the trigger bar.
And as you went to confront Morris Black, and as the animation shows, he starts to get up from the chair and come back, what was going through your mind?
I was scared.
What were you afraid of?
Here comes a man with a gun.
And what did you do in response to that?
I grabbed him.
What did you grab?
With my right hand, I grabbed the gun on top of his hand, and with my left hand, I grabbed his shoulder,
Which shoulder?
his right shoulder.
As somewhat as Mr. Chesnoff and I did here.
Yes,
And as you did that, what happened?
we fell down.
Do you know why you fell down?
I think he tripped on the leg from the table.
And falling from there, where did he fall?
In the kitchen,
Completely in the kitchen or partly in the kitchen?
just barely in the kitchen.
Do you recall the testimony that was read from the medical examiner in Galveston that Mr. Black had a straight mark across his back at kind of a diagonal? Do you recall that testimony?
No,
Nonetheless, do you see, was there a barrier, not a barrier, but a dividing line between the kitchen and the carpet in the living room?
yes,
It's depicted on the screen here as kind of a goldish colored end of the carpet starting of the kitchen floor. Is that right?
yes,
Is that the way it was?
yes.
And where did the bullet hit him?
Left side of his face next to his nose.
Can you indicate with your finger where it hit him?
It hit him here.
Indicating on more or less on the middle of the bridge of the nose.
Just to the left of the nose.
Thank you. Did you know that he was dead immediately?
No,
What did you do?
what did I do? I got up, walked over to him, and realized he was not breathing.
And then what happened? What did you do?
I left the apartment and ran down the block to the payphone to call 911.
Did you have a phone in the apartment?
No,
Did Morris have a phone in his apartment?
no,
What was down the block?
a payphone
Where was your cell phone?
in the car,
And the car was back at the
the synagogue.
synagogue? So down the street, what was located there, where the payphone was?
It was a hamburger place called Charlie's.
Was that the nearest phone that you knew of in that moment?
That's where the nearest phone was, yes.
And what did you do there?
Well, I got into a semi-argument with a lady and her husband, I assume it was her husband, and their son, because they were using the phone.
What did you say to them?
I said, I've got to call 911.
Did the lady give the phone up?
No,
And where was her, as you said you assume, her husband?
her husband was leaning against the car. She was on the phone with one hand on the shoulder of a boy.
What happened next?
I repeated several times, I've got to call 911. And the man who was leaning against the car took several steps towards me.
Was he a big man?
Yes,
So what did you do?
I decided I would go and knock on the neighbor's door.
Which neighbor?
Oh, there were only two of them. I had no idea. One's neighbor's name was Verbago. The other one, I have no idea what their name was.
Did you go and knock on the door?
I did.
Was there any response?
No.
What did you do next?
Went back to the apartment.
When you went back to the apartment, what did you do?
When I got back to the apartment, Morris's head was in a puddle of blood, and it was very apparent that he was dead.
So what did you do?
I sat down on the bed.
Do you know how long you sat on the bed?
A good hour or so.
What were you doing? What were you thinking? What was going on in your mind?
What am I going to do?
And so, when you say, what am I going to do? What were your options? What did you think your options were?
Well, the big option was, should I go to the police or not go to the police?
And
I decided that there's no way that anybody's going to believe that my neighbor is lying in my kitchen with a bullet from my gun in his face, and that I had rented this apartment disguised as a woman.
so, did you decide not to call the police?
I decided to go wash the blood off my hand. I
Did
went
you-
into the,
Did you have blood on your hand?
yes,
Where?
on my hands.
All right. So what did you do?
I went into the bathroom. While I was washing my hands, I saw my face in the mirror, and I had blood on my face.
And then what did you do?
I washed my face.
Where was the blood on your face?
All over my face.
Okay, what did you next do?
Well, I went for a walk, but the lady who testified said that I was slamming the door. I don't remember slamming the door, but it certainly is possible.
Now, did you see that lady then?
Mrs. Henriquez,
Mrs. Enriquez, yes.
I guess after that incident, I never saw her again.
But did you see her that day?
I saw her that day, yes.
And where was she?
She was walking down the stairs from her apartment.
Did she say anything to you?
I think she might have said "Ola."
All right, then what did you do?
I walked to the seawall, and I must have walked for a couple of hours.
What were you doing walking on the seawall?
Just walking.
Do you know whether you were talking to yourself?
Probably I was, but I don't remember.
And what was going on in your mind?
What am I going to do?
Did you come to any decision?
I reaffirmed my decision not to go to the police.
And so, what did you do from then?
I decided I had to figure out a way to get Morris Black's body out of my apartment.
Did you go back to the apartment?
No,
What did you do?
went to the San Luis Hotel.
What did you do at the San Luis?
Actually, I went to the synagogue and I got the car and then I drove to the San Luis Hotel.
So now what time of the day or night is it?
Now it's early evening,
Early evening?
6 or 7 o'clock.
All right. So did you just leave the apartment as it was with Morris Black lying halfway in the kitchen in the living room?
Yes,
Had you tried to move him at all?
not then.
All right, what next happened?
I decided I would pick up Morris Black, wrap him in a blanket, carry him someplace away from the apartment.
All right, so did you do that? What did you do next?
I took 2 halcyons and went to sleep.
You said you took what?
Halcyon.
And what is
It's a
halcyon?
sleeping pill that I had.
You took 2 of them
I took 2 of them and went to sleep.
at the San Luis.
Yes.
All right, when did you wake up?
I woke up early and decided that I would go pick up Morris Black.
Let me stop you. Was it the next morning that you woke up?
Yes,
You know what time it was?
Saturday.
That's Saturday, that's the day. Do you know what time it was?
Oh, 7-ish, I guess.
Okay, what did you do from there?
I drove to the apartment.
When you got there, what did you find?
Well, Morris' body was right where I had left it.
And what did you do?
I decided I would roll the body up in a blanket and carry it out of the apartment.
Did you try to do that?
I did.
Well, with what result?
I quickly realized that I could not lift Morris Black's body. Not even a little bit.
Let me get that microphone a little closer to you.
How could it get any closer?
Did you have a blanket to roll him in?
Yeah,
Did you put the blanket on him or roll him in it?
I started to roll him into the blanket, but I realized I couldn't lift him.
Why couldn't you lift him?
Why couldn't I lift him? Because he was too heavy.
Was his body stiff or was it limber?
It was not stiff.
Okay, so then if you decided you couldn't lift him, what did you decide to do?
I decided to dismember Morris Black's body
Why?
so that I could carry the pieces out of the apartment.
How did you go about doing that?
Well, he had a big axe in his apartment. I went and got the axe. And then I threw a drop cloth over Morris Black's body with the hands spread out and the legs spread out. And then I walked to the liquor store that was 2 blocks away, called Economy Liquors, and I bought a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Where did you get the drop cloth that you said you spread on the body?
It was on the kitchen floor.
How had you had a drop cloth on the kitchen floor?
I had a drop cloth. Actually, there were several drop cloths. It took, I think, 3 drop cloths to cover the whole kitchen floor.
When you say drop cloth, what do you mean?
I mean, that's what it's called. You get them in hardware stores. Painters use them so that they will not get paint on surfaces that they don't want the paint on.
All right, your voice is getting weak, so try to speak up. So it was a painter's drop cloth?
Yes,
Where did you get the idea of getting a painter's drop cloth that you already had?
I did not want to see Morris's body.
I understand that, but where had you gotten you got a drop cloth before that, didn't you?
I had bought the drop cloths probably 6 months before.
Why?
The kitchen linoleum was in very bad shape.
All right, and what did you use it for then?
The drop cloth,
Yes.
I had them laid out on the kitchen floor.
All right. So now we're at the point where you put the drop cloth over Morris Black and you went to the liquor store, Economy Liquors, and you bought a bottle of Jack Daniels. What did you do next?
I walked back to the apartment, got the axe out of Morris Black's apartment, and I proceeded to chop the limbs off of Morris Black's body.
Do you remember everything about it or not?
I remember nothing about it.
You testified about this in Galveston to the Galveston jury. How did it seem to you when this was going on? What was it like for you?
I don't know how to answer that question.
Do you or not have a clear recollection of all that happened after that?
I spent the time between chopping at Morris Black's arms and legs by drinking the Jack Daniels. I repeatedly took big slugs of Jack Daniels, and I threw up a lot.
So what did you do about disposing of the body parts?
I put the body parts in garbage bags and put the garbage bags in my Honda CRV.
Where did you get the garbage bags?
I had garbage bags.
Did you have to buy any more?
I think maybe I did.
In the testimony of Gary Jones, who was the police officer who inventoried everything in the bags that were later found, there was a receipt from Chalmers for garbage bags. There was garbage bags that obviously came from Chalmers with their sticker on it. Do you know whether you went back and bought garbage bags?
I don't recall.
Do you know what else you bought at Chalmers?
No.
There's been testimony that when the body parts were found, the garbage bags were triple bagged. Do you have any recall of doing that?
No.
In many of the bags, there were items that had come from your apartment and from Morris Black's apartment. How do you explain that?
I guess I can't explain it.
What did you do with Morris Black's apartment?
What did I do with his apartment?
Yes.
I did not do anything with his apartment.
There were some of Morris Black's belongings in the garbage bags. Do you know, did you put them there?
Well, I must have, but I don't remember doing that.
There was, for instance, in the garbage bags, there was a receipt from the optometrist for your glasses, Dr. Matocha. How did that get in the bags?
Is that a question?
Yes. How did that receipt from Dr. Matocha get in the bags?
I must have put it there.
There were many things that would lead directly back to either you or Morris Black in the bags. Did you think about that when you were loading those bags up, if you know?
No.
And what did you do with the bags?
I went to a part of Galveston Island where there's a pier, and I carried the bags to the end of the pier and threw them into the Houston Ship Channel.
Did you know the depth of the bay at that point?
No.
Could you see the bottom?
No.
Do you know how many bags there were?
No.
Did you throw all of Morris Black's body parts in the bay?
Yes.
What did you do after that?
Well, I didn't throw the garbage bags in the water until nighttime.
And then?
I went to the San Luis Hotel and went to sleep.
What did you do with the gun?
I had taken it from the apartment when I threw out the garbage bags.
Where was the gun?
Well, I imagine I put it in the kitchen cabinet.
Sergeant Jones has testified that he found the gun along with 2 magazines, an empty cartridge, in the garbage that was behind your house. Did you know that?
I know that was testified to, so I must have put the gun and the magazines in the garbage.
What else did you put in the garbage, if you know?
I have no idea.
What did you do to clean up the apartment?
Very little. I had a bucket of water and soap, and I threw water everywhere and cleaned it up with a mop.
And then where, you said you went to the San Luis that night after you threw the garbage bags in the pier, off the pier?
Correct.
All right. What'd you do the next day?
So that's Sunday. Monday, I left and drove to New Orleans.
Did you ever go back to the pier to see where the bags were or if they had sunk?
I did go back. The bags, which I expected to sink, were floating.
Was that during the day or at night when you went back?
Would have been Sunday afternoon.
What did you do when you saw that the bags were floating?
I went back to the San Luis Hotel.
At some point, there's a video of you buying a money order to pay Klaus Dillman for Morris Black's apartment. Do you have a clear recollection of doing that?
No,
Do you deny that you did it?
no,
Do you know why you did it?
I was afraid that if the landlord did not get the rent on Monday, he would go to the apartment building, to the apartment, looking for Morris.
All right. So now, did you go back to the pier yet again?
Just that one time.
All right. Did you ever go back and see people around there or the police?
No,
Do you have a clear recollection of that now?
of what?
Of whether you went back and saw the police there?
Oh, yes, that did happen. I did go back another time, and there were police cars down by the water where I had thrown the garbage bags.
So what did that make you feel like?
Made me feel like going away.
And what did you do?
I went to New Orleans.
Did you go to New Orleans right away?
Monday.
What did you do with the stuff in your apartment?
There was hardly anything there.
You've heard the testimony of Gary Jones live in Galveston and read here about finding your garbage several days later, finding the gun and newspapers and receipts and so forth. Do you know when you put that in the garbage?
No.
Why is that?
Why do I not know?
Yes.
I don't know because I don't know.
All right, you drove to New Orleans?
I drove, yes,
What day did you drive to New Orleans?
Monday.
Okay, and what did you do Monday?
I drove to New Orleans,
Yes. Where did you go in New Orleans?
to the apartment that I had rented, disguised as a woman.
when you went to that apartment, did you again disguise yourself as a woman or not?
No.
What did you do?
What did I do?
Yes.
I don't remember what I did.
Did you try to find out what was going on in Galveston in any way?
Oh, I went online a couple of days later, Wednesday or Thursday, and went to the Galveston Daily News.com website, and they talked about finding a corpse that had been dismembered.
Was there anything yet about who it was or who was the suspect?
No.
So what did you decide to do?
Well, on the following Monday, I decided to go back to Galveston, which I did, and I got arrested.
Did you get arrested right away when you went back to Galveston, or did you check into a hotel? What did you do?
I checked into a motel, and the next morning I got arrested.
You had been at the San Luis before. Did you go to the San Luis, or did you go to some other motel?
I went to a little motel.
Do you remember what the name was?
Say that again.
Do you remember the name of the motel?
No. It might have been a Holiday Inn Express.
And so then, did you spend the night there?
Yes,
And what happened the next day?
I was arrested.
We know you were arrested. Where did you go the next day?
Well, I was arrested in the morning. I'd gone out to go for a jog. I was arrested right away. Oh, I guess I went to the eye doctor to pick up my glasses. I was arrested leaving the eye doctor.
All right. Was that Dr. Matocha?
Yes.
Do you recall what happened when you walked into the eye doctor's office?
Well, it's a typical optometrist.
Did you identify yourself
Yes.
as?
And they said, hold on, we're just finishing your glasses now.
I mean, did you tell them who you were?
Yes.
And could you tell whether the person you talked to was nervous or not?
I could not tell that they knew that there was a warrant out for my arrest, which I found out later.
All right. So how long were you at the optometrist's office?
Probably 45 minutes.
Eventually, did you get your glasses?
No,
Why not?
I decided there was something wrong, and I left.
So you left without your glasses.
Correct.
Then what did you do?
Well, I was arrested right away
Outside the doctor's office or in your car?
in my car,
How far away from the doctor's office?
probably half a mile.
Did the police take your car into custody?
They did.
Did you know then that there was Morris Black's blood in your car?
I'm not surprised, but I did not know.
You've learned that later, haven't you?
Say that again.
You've learned later that Morris Black's blood was found in your car?
Yes.
You've learned later that Morris Black's blood was found outside your apartment?
Yes.
You've learned later that Morris Black's blood was found inside your apartment?
Yes.
And you've learned later that clues were in both the garbage bags, in the water, and the garbage that you left behind your apartment, right?
Yes.
Clues that led directly to your arrest.
Yes.
All right. Does the court want to take a break? Not yet?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, let's go on. When you were first arrested, Bob, you've seen the pictures that we just put on the screen that the police took of you. What happened when you were first arrested?
I was put in handcuffs and escorted to a police car.
Did they take DNA samples from you?
Yes.
All right. And were you turned over to a detective?
Was I what?
Turned over to a detective.
A detective. I was driven by a detective, yes.
To the police station.
Well, first they took the DNA samples. Then we went to the police station.
Were you told that you were being charged with murder?
Not right away, but yes, the same. Late in the afternoon, the detective told me that I had been charged with murder.
What about bail? Did they tell you about bail?
Yes, he said you've been charged with murder and your bond has been set at $250,000. I was amazed. I had no idea that someone charged with murder would be allowed to make bail.
So what happened next?
Well, eventually, I was taken to the jail and given an opportunity to make telephone calls.
Who did you call?
Debbie Charity,
Your wife?
yes.
Did she arrange for bail for you?
Yes.
And so, did bail get posted that day or the next?
The next day, I stayed overnight in jail. And the next day, Debbie wired to the lawyer that I had retained the $250,000.
Were you released?
I was.
Where did you go after you were released?
I had no ID and no money. So the bail bondsman agreed to check me into a motel and to give me all of his cash, which was several $100s. And he said I should come back in the morning he would give me $1,000.
What did you do?
I called Debbie from the motel.
And with what result?
She was crying.
I'm not asking what was said. With what result when you called her? What was the result after you called her?
Now I'm out on bail. I wasn't looking for any result.
What did you do next?
After calling Debbie, I slept in the motel that night.
And what happened the next day?
I took a taxi to Houston and the Greyhound to New Orleans.
Were you intending to come back?
No,
So you jumped bail.
I had posted bail in order to get out.
Well, bail doesn't just let you out. You have to come back at some time. Did you jump bail?
Oh, yes.
And eventually, years later, did you plead guilty to the offense of jumping bail and serve some time in prison for that?
Yes, they charged me with jumping bail twice, even though I only jumped bail once. And they charged me with tampering or destroying evidence. And I pled guilty and agreed to serve 5 years.
That was after the trial in Galveston, correct?
Correct.
All right, we're not there yet, but the point I wanted to make is you pled guilty to jumping bail and you pled guilty to cutting up Morris's body, didn't you?
I don't think I was charged
Well, tampering with evidence.
with cutting up Morris's body. I subsequently found out that dismembering a corpse in the state of Texas is a misdemeanor, and I was never charged with that misdemeanor.
But you were charged with tampering with evidence, which made it a felony.
Yeah,
The evidence being Morris's body.
I never figured that all out, but yeah.
All right. So back to the time sequence. You took a taxi to Houston, got the Greyhound to New Orleans. Did you have to give any kind of identification to take the Greyhound to New Orleans?
No,
What were you planning to do then?
well, I knew I could not stay in the apartment I had rented in New Orleans because in the car were keys to that apartment and the address for that apartment. And I correctly figured that the police would go to that apartment.
So, when you were arrested in Galveston, in your car after leaving the eye doctor, the items that you just described, that is the keys to the New Orleans apartment and the address of the New Orleans apartment were in the car.
Correct.
All right. So, but you had been to that apartment after Morris was dead, and you came back from that apartment to Galveston, correct?
Yes.
All right. So, you're in New Orleans. You've taken the Greyhound. What do you do now?
I went to that apartment,
What'd you do?
went to sleep.
What did you next do?
I figured I should leave New Orleans. So I looked in the yellow pages for car rentals, and there were some car rentals that advertised that they would rent you a car without a credit card. So I telephoned one of those, and I went and rented a car and drove to Mobile, Alabama.
Did you have any guns with you then?
No,
When you got to Mobile, Alabama, what did you do?
well, the car that I had rented without the credit card was falling apart. It was making loud noises, and it had a very strong shimmy. So I went to another place called Rent-A-Wreck that did not require credit cards, and rented a different wreck.
Where did you get the money?
I had money in New Orleans,
Where did you get the money in New Orleans?
well, from the bank.
Was that the same money you had had in Galveston?
Yes,
And when did you take it to New Orleans?
when I first went to New Orleans.
You mean after Morris was dead?
Yes,
You know approximately how much money you had in New Orleans?
$400,000.
Did you take all of that $400,000 with you to Mobile, Alabama?
I FedExed the vast majority of it to Debbie Charitan, and I kept approximately $50,000.
Okay, so you kept about $50,000 with you. And did you have that in Mobile?
Yes,
And in Mobile, you go to a place called Rent-A-Wreck. What did you do there?
I rented a wreck.
What kind of car was it?
I don't remember.
Is it the same car that you had when you were arrested in Pennsylvania?
That's the car that I drove to Pennsylvania.
Okay. Where did you go from Mobile?
Well, I got on the main road that goes south from New England to Florida, Route 95. And I drove back to right near where I used to live in South Salem.
Why did you go there?
I wanted to go back to the places. I wanted to go back to the places that I knew.
It's just after 3 o'clock. Let's
Break until 3:15-ish. Do not talk about the case or about any of the people or any subject involved in it with anyone, including the other jurors. Do not converse. Did you need to put,
I was curious, Your Honor, you mentioned to me that did we want to brief it? I had briefed it. That's what threw me off. I don't know what happened between the...
all I have is a notice, you wanted a shortened time. That's the only brief I got. Okay, we'll check it out. We'll s- Okay, we're in recess.